With fantasy playoffs right around the corner, let's go through our starting lineups and make sure we're as efficient as possible. Today, we are continuing our love-hate series as we look into 3 players I'm looking to start everywhere and 3 players I'm looking to sit. But before we dig in, head over to 4for4.com and use promo code YouTube to get yourself 25% off any subscription plan. Start Bo Nix. Even if the 2024 Denver Broncos don't make an extravagant playoff run, it's clear they've managed to silence their critics and regain some respectability, regardless of how their season ultimately ends. Sean Payton, the franchise, faced intense scrutiny after a rough start to the season, marked by a sputtering offense that struggled to move the ball through the air, averaging just over 150 passing yards per game. Rookie quarterback Bo Nix, the centerpiece of the team's offensive future, seemed overwhelmed in the early going, and doubts began to mount about how this season would grind along. However, the tide began to turn as Nix grew more comfortable in Payton's system, and the offensive line in its second year together started to gel. Since their pivotal Week 5 win against this Las Vegas Raiders team, the Broncos have transformed into a much more efficient and competitive team. Over that stretch, the offense and Bo Nix ranks 6th in the NFL in completion percentage over expected at 5.9% and 5th in pressure rate allowed at 24.4%, showcasing both improved quarterback play and protection. Nix, in particular, has thrived, ranking his fantasy football's QB4 during that span, averaging an impressive 21.3 fantasy points per game. With Nix firmly in QB1 consideration, the offense has brought new life to its key playmakers. Courtland Sutton, who was largely written off, including by me, after a slow start to the season, has reemerged as a viable wide receiver 2 option, particularly here in Week 12 with 6 teams on a bye. Start Tyrone Tracy. The Giants are clearly looking ahead to 2025, but that doesn't mean we should overlook their rookie offensive pieces in favorable matchups, especially running back Tyrone Tracy. A converted wide receiver, Tracy continues to see meaningful playing time thanks to game scripts that favor his versatile skill set over veteran backup Devin Singletary. In Week 12, he'll benefit not only from his team's lack of other reliable playmakers, but also from a matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense vulnerable to pass-catching running backs. Tommy DeVito, the flavor of the week starting quarterback, has a check-down-heavy style that boosts Tracy's floor. Last season, DeVito posted an 11.8% check-down rate, the 9th highest among 48 quarterbacks with at least 100 dropbacks, making him a perfect fit for a back like Tracy, who thrives on short-area targets. Tampa Bay's defense has allowed the 9th most receptions and 5th most receiving yards to players coming out of the backfield this season, a weakness that aligns perfectly with Tracy's strengths. While Tracy's receiving production has been a little mediocre, his best outing being a 6 for 57 performance on 6 targets in Week 6, this matchup sets well for a similar effort. If the Bucs defense focuses on limiting rookie wideout Malik Neighbors, Tracy could see increased volume as a checkdown option and safety valve. With extended opportunities to operate in space against a defense prone to giving up yardage out of the backfield, Tracy has both a solid floor and intriguing upside in Week 12. Start Will Dissly. Thrusting a rookie into a prominent role as an offensive tackle can often be a mixed bag, but the Los Angeles Chargers have struck gold with Notre Dame's Joe Alt. Alt currently leads all rookie tackles in PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric, allowing more than 1 pressure in just 2 games. Anchoring the offensive line across from all-pro left tackle Rashawn Slater, Alt has helped create one of the league's most formidable tackle tandems. This protection has been a boon for the Chargers' passing game, and in particular, the once-forgotten wideout Quentin Johnston and tight end Will Dissly. Dissly continues to surprise as the Los Angeles Chargers TE1, capitalizing on Hayden Hurst's continued inactive status. He wasted no time producing last week, scoring on a 29-yard vert route in the first quarter before finishing with 80 yards and 16 fantasy points. With a matchup against the Ravens defense that ranks 31st in yards and dead last in receptions allowed to inline targets, Dissly's role looks even more enticing. Running 56.5% of his routes from an inline alignment and tallying the 6th most yards from that position among tight ends, he's set up for success once again. Dissly, who is still available in about 70% of Yahoo leagues, is worth a grab for those in need of tight end help. Sit Jordan Addison. Addison has a knack for finding the end zone, a skill that has kept him in the fantasy conversation, but trusting him in these critical pre-playoff weeks remains a risky proposition. While his touchdown production has been impressive, his overall usage and efficiency metrics paint a less favorable picture. Among 94 qualifying wide receivers, Addison ranks 49th in yards per route run and 51st in first read rate, suggesting he isn't a primary focus of this team's passing game. Additionally, his targets per route run highlight a lack of consistent involvement, and his modest 2.54 yards after the catch per reception shows a player struggling to maximize his targets when he doesn't get behind the defense. Adding to the concern is this tough matchup against a stingy Bears defense. Chicago's secondary has been excellent at limiting big plays and keeping receivers in check. They rank 10th in the NFL in receiving yards allowed per game and have surrendered the fewest receiving touchdowns this season. They've also been effective at preventing these explosive plays, allowing just 13 receptions of 20-plus yards, the 12th fewest in the league. For fantasy managers, this combination of Addison's middling efficiency metrics and a challenging matchup should give pause. While his touchdown upside might make him a boomer bust flex option in deeper leagues, relying on him as a core piece of your lineup in such a pivotal week carries significant risk. If you have safer, higher volume options, they're likely the better choice as you gear up for the fantasy playoffs. Sit Drake Maye. Maye has found his stride recently, showing improvement as a passer while flashing his mobility as a rushing threat. However, his progress has been stymied by a struggling Patriots offensive line that has been anything but reliable. The rookie quarterback has faced pressure on 37.8% of his dropbacks this season, the sixth highest rate among 40 qualifying quarterbacks. To make matters worse, New England's 9.3% adjusted sack rate ranks 27th in the league, a glaring issue against a defense as opportunistic as Miami's. Miami ranks 9th in passing yards allowed per game, showcasing their ability to limit aerial attacks. They've also been tough to exploit downfield, sitting 7th in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed. On top of that, their discipline against mobile quarterbacks has been a clear strength. They rank 3rd in quarterback scramble yards allowed per game at only 10.4, effectively neutralizing one of Maye's most promising assets. According to 4for4 schedule-adjusted data, the Patriots rank 30th in AFPA, or adjusted fantasy points allowed, to opposing DSTs, reflecting their consistent struggles to protect the football and sustain drives. Maye has been a significant contributor to this, leading the league with a 5.2% turnover-worthy play rate. This combination of vulnerabilities makes Miami's defense a top fantasy play this week, as they have both the personnel and the momentum to capitalize on New England's weaknesses. So while Maye's potential for future growth remains promising, Week 12 is shaping up to be a forgettable outing for the rookie quarterback. In fantasy, he's a clear bench candidate, while the Dolphins' DST looks primed for a high-scoring performance. Sit Jaylen Waddle. Who would have thought it would come to this? Despite another favorable matchup for Jaylen Waddle in Week 12, there's little reason to trust Miami's number 2 wide receiver in fantasy lineups. Waddle has struggled mightily to deliver consistent production, scoring double-digit fantasy points in only one game this season, back in Week 1. That also happened to be the only time he's caught more than 4 passes or surpassed 60 receiving yards, leaving fantasy managers frustrated with his lack of involvement in the Dolphins' once explosive and sometimes explosive offense. The New England Patriots present a theoretically great matchup as the third bottom 10 defense Waddle has faced in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers since that Week 1 game. Yet in his 2 prior matchups against similarly weak defenses, including this same Patriots in Week 5, Waddle combined for just 13.7 half PPR points. 13.7 in both games. Waddle's declining role in Miami's passing attack is no longer a trend, but a sad reality. While Tyreek Hill continues to demand a massive target share, Waddle has been overshadowed by emerging contributors like running back Devon Achane and tight end Jonnu Smith, effectively relegating him to the 4th option in this offense. What initially felt like a fluky slump has turned into a season-long reality, and here in Week 12, the writing is on the wall for Waddle's diminished fantasy value. Unless something drastically changes, it's hard to justify starting him with confidence as the fantasy playoffs approach.